All right, this is the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. It is Thursday, July 29th, and it is 6:05 p.m. Welcome, everyone. First thing on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from the June meeting. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? Anybody have any comments, edits, corrections?
I move to accept the minutes from the June meeting.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, and I'm an aye. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Donna, for joining us from Valley CDC. You may not know, you know all of us, sort of?
No, I don't know Brad. I don't think I've met Brad yet. And I'm sorry, the other person, I lost their name already again. It's gone. Your other committee member.
Oh, well, Kate's not on here yet. Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
hopefully Kate will join us.
Kathy.
Brad, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Bradley. So I've been on the partnership now for a little over a year. But before working with the city here, I did transitional housing services for survivors of sexual and domestic violence, LGBTQ youth. That was up in Vermont. So I did that for about like 10 years. So, I come at housing from a advocacy oriented approach. But I mean, I don't really need to advocate too much here. I feel like it's a really great team. So we all just kind of do our work and get things going. And yeah, so it's been great. I know I've met a couple of people from your organization already, and I just wanted to offer my appreciation to the work that you do. You've been a really good community partner from what I've seen so far. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We really appreciate that, Brad. And it's really nice to meet you.
Kate's here. Kate, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I missed the others, so I don't know how long we're going, so I'll keep it short. Long day. I'm Kate Shapiro. I'm a member of the partnership, and very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Kate.
All
So
right.
I know Jane met with you in the past regarding this project. So I've actually decided to change it up a little bit, slightly. I've asked for more money because of this crazy market. I'm not sure what's crazier, the market or the COVID. I'm really honest to God. I don't know what's crazier. So I sent out a proposal, and hopefully I'm sure Jana shared that with all of you, but I did put it up to $50,000 per household. And I'm happy to discuss it, and I'm glad Jamie's here to get a feeling of the appetite of the city and the CPAC committee and all that. So it's really been really tough for the buyers out here. The properties are going 10, 30, 40 over the asking price. We even had a couple over here in Northampton. We had one go 96,000 over the asking price. That is just insanity. It's out of town buyers. My new next door neighbor is from Manhattan, and we've had Brooklyn people and New Yorkers in our webinars. It's just really been frightening. So between the out of towners and just inflation, and the seller's market and the sellers not wanting to do anything for the buyers, I felt it was important to bump it up so that the buyers had some reserves at the end of the day to deal with home maintenance and repairs. Because the sellers are not willing to do anything at all for the buyers at all. They don't want to fix anything. They won't even replace a fuse box. And that was like a given. 3 years ago, the agent would tell them, you're going to have to change that. They don't even do that now. It's really just pretty crummy out there. So I did put it up to 50,000. I left it kind of loose, the language on recapture, whether it was a 0% deferred payment loan, because there seems to be an appetite for recapture recently in the last couple of years for these programs. Most towns want to recapture some of these funds, and I can't say that I blame them. When the market goes up 30% year over year for the last couple of years, I can't blame them for wanting some of their money back. So, those are the kind of things and your questions that I want to hopefully discuss with you tonight to see what your thoughts are on it. And, you know, Jana, I know you have a lot of experience with this, Jamie as well. I'm just meeting your other members, and I'm glad to meet you, and I just want to know what your thoughts are about the proposal, and what do you think the appetite of the CPAC is at this point? I know they've wanted recapture. I think the last time I met with them, they would like to recapture money.
When you say, can you just clarify? And I just actually emailed Jana to see. I thought I had the revised proposal, but I don't. Did you guys send it out?
I had sent
No,
it.
no, no. I'm sure you did. I'm looking at you. I know you can't.
I just forwarded it to you, Kate. So the version that I was looking at was the one that Donna sent on Tuesday, right? The 27th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for the last minute. It's been a little hectic here.
And can you just clarify, when you're speaking about recapture, are you saying?
So we call it a loan. We call it a loan, and it's a 0% interest deferred payment loan. So we could either forgive it over time, or we could recapture some of the funds back to the town, to the CPAC, or to your committee, or to the town, straight to the town, however the mortgage was written up.
And in the past where we've done recapture, it's only been when the house is sold before so for like a housing rehab project with CDBG funds, it's a 15-year recapture period, and every year about 7.5 or 10% comes off.
Right,
the
after the
amount
15.
owed. And it's to avoid speculation. So someone doesn't just like buy the house, fix it up, flip it with the city's help, and like actually end up making the city more unaffordable rather than
I get it.
increasing affordability.
I totally get it. So we would not forgive this very swiftly. We would do it like we've done it in the past. One, it would be a 30-year loan. I'd be looking at a 30-year loan on this because it's such a substantial amount of money, and it would be forgiven like 1/30th each year over 30 years if we were going to do a full forgiveness. But we could wait till the 15th year to even forgive any of it.
That's what I was looking through in the proposal, because I mean, I think you guys know the politics of Easthampton better than me, but in my just logical kind of what we're hoping to achieve, right? We're hoping to achieve kind of stability, supporting lower income folks. We want to avoid any kind of flipping. And so, I mean, I don't know if you have to keep 15, but maybe 10, maybe, you know, it starts at 10 or something.
Right. That's a great idea too. I mean, we've historically done it for, like, we did one a few years ago, and I think it was $7,500, and we forgave it over 5 years. We've recently done some in other towns, and we've, you know, made the periods a little longer. We did 50,000 in Amherst, and it was over 30 years, 1/30th each year over 30 years. We mostly get buyers that are staying in these houses forever. They're not even going to be move-up buyers, honestly. You know, this the housing market, there are no move-up buyers anymore. Maybe occasionally, but not my clients. They're getting a house and they're staying with it for a long term. Occasionally people, you know, situations change, job situations change where people have to sell. We did have somebody in the last round who had to sell pretty quickly after they purchased, and they were really worried about, you know, getting enough money to pay that off. And they did. They squeaked through fine, and they paid it off. They paid it off no problem. But, you know, I don't worry about it so much now because the market is just so crazy that it's going up so much each year. I mean, 5 or 6% a year was like a really great gain. Now we're seeing like 30% a year. That's like insanity. It's like total insanity. I don't think it'll last forever, but and yeah, and we want to share some of this equity. You know, the idea of the program is for people to build assets and equity in the property, and you know, hopefully, move forward in life and be able to save more and sustain the housing more, because you know, you have a landlord, they're like, I'm selling the house, you have to leave, or my cousin's moving and you have to leave, and then they fix it up and they rent it for twice the amount when the next person comes in. I had a client recently who had to get out of their lease, wanted to get out of their lease because they were buying. The landlord was thrilled because he was going to turn around and double the rent. Thrilled to let him out. So this is kind of what we're seeing, and rental payments are getting as high as mortgages now. I mean, it's really just insane. And we are going to search far and wide for these folks. So, you know, we really want to find our targeted audience, people, low, moderate income people who, underserved populations, you know, all those, all the underserved populations. We're really going to do a far and wide outreach across Western Mass to try to find folks who are interested in the, program and want to buy in Easthampton. I'm already aware of a lot of people who want to buy in Easthampton. They've been running around making offers, getting beat up. Some of them have moved to Chicopee. Some of them have moved to Chicopee and Holyoke and Greenfield. You know, we're helping a lot of people move to Greenfield and Holyoke over here, but you know, that's where the affordable houses are. So
So Donna, can you talk a little bit? So what's the total? So it's 50,000. So it looks like it's 18 months. You're hoping to work with 45 households,
mhm,
and the hope is that 4 of them would buy homes
right.
and each get $50,000. And then, so what do you think your total budget's going to be? I assume you're going to include admin in the request.
Yeah, so I the total budget, I'm gonna pull it up right now. Sorry, I didn't have it open. It's a good thing I stayed here to help my father with this report because I'm having one of those days and I almost left and then the meeting popped up. So it's a good thing I made it here today. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Donna, I
But it
made
was
you,
like very last minute that I got the notice of the meeting. So the
Donna,
total,
I made you a co-host so you can
sure,
share that.
awesome. All right. All right, here's my budget. And I'll send this to you. I thought I had included it. All right, come on. I know you're open. Come on, it's open. I know it's open. Why isn't it showing it?
While Donna's looking for this, well, actually, I guess Donna could.
Sure.
Are you presenting at the city council meeting or someone else?
It would have to go through CPA.
That's what I meant. CPA meeting.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I probably will be. Yeah, me and Peter. Or, yeah, probably me and Peter. We're not even on the agenda yet.
Yes, they haven't submitted their application yet. This is
So-
the pre-conversation.
I guess what I'm just what it and maybe Donna you can clarify.
Yeah, you
But
know
what you're looking for from the housing partnership right now is to sort of
a
brief
letter of support.
to brief
Yeah.
them, get a letter of support, and figure out if there's any objections to what's being proposed from a housing perspective or from
Yeah.
the affordable housing perspective. Is that correct?
Yes, and feedback from
Yeah.
from you folks.
So I guess I don't know if this is sort of you're going to address later, but one of the things that I've been considering is that when we'd run this program in the past, we weren't able to use these to add to the SHI because
Right.
well, when we did the 7,500, we only had a 5-year recapture period. And I think that I'm not even sure if this works for getting units onto the SHI, but maybe with the 30-year recapture, it starts to approach long-term affordability.
I think the issue was, Jamie, is that we were using 100% instead of 80. And people tended to be like, 87%, 83%, just over 80% AMI. I think that was the issue of why we hadn't shared, we hadn't counted those in the inventory. That was really the reason.
Okay. Because I think, personally, and I can only speak for myself in this, I'm not speaking for the planning department or the CPA, but I question $200,000 going to 4 people if we're not getting some long-term affordability or creating new units. And so I would, and I think that the CPA committee might have similar concerns, but if there's a way to sort of head that off by saying, well, we're creating 4 accessible, 4 permanent new units, then that would, I think, alleviate a lot of concerns, at least for me.
Yeah, Jamie, it's not allowing me to share this budget.
Okay,
I did email it to you. I don't know if I don't know if you have access to that.
you just sent it to me.
Yeah.
I'm just looking real quick at the subsidized housing inventory
it worked.
requesting new units form. So it says units are subject to a long-term restriction limiting occupancy, blah, 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 for a specified period of time, at least 30 years or longer for newly affordable units and at least 15 for rehabilitated units. So maybe they could count if they're not new. So I'm assuming they would be, I don't know. They're not really new or rehab. So I guess we would need some clarity from DHCD.
I think this would be a newly affordable because it's not,
Right, the 50.
it's not currently on the SHI.
Right.
Well, I think it was referencing newly constructed, but either way, it seems like maybe at 30 years it could count.
Okay, so you mean a 30-year mortgage and note or a 30-year deed rider?
I
30
think
year deed rider.
yeah,
But are you wanting to are you willing to do a deed rider for somebody below 100% or only 80%?
Well, the count on the SHI, it'd have to be below 80%.
Right, right.
Yeah.
and I think that, you know, there's a lot of people that need help, but the people that need the most help are going to be the people who have the lower incomes and are less likely to actually have chances at home ownership.
Right, right.
But I do want to
agree.
be realistic about this, which is, I'm just being realistic in this market. I don't think we're going to get 80%ers. Like I think like the market. So I think that in the past, I don't remember what it was that we've done programs and no one can use them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I just think we should call a spade, that if we're restricting it to 80%, I think we're going to get 0 people. Because I mean, it's not just that people are giving cash. People are paying cash for houses. Like, who pays cash for?
I have to wonder, is it parents taking huge equity loans and buying the house cash for kids and then they mortgage it up? I just really got to wonder what's going on out there.
So I just want to throw that out there. Again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't get something. I think, Jamie, you're bringing up a really good point. Like,
yeah, I agree.
CPA, you know, but I just want to be realistic too, that my feeling is if we go for the 80% and I think most people would do the 30. I don't think it's a big deal, but I just don't think we're going to get anyone.
Right. I mean, you know, I see both points of view and I agree. And you know, I agree with both of the viewpoints. You know, the people below 80, people at or below 80 are really the ones really struggling with the rentals and, you know, really just, they're paying rents more than 50% of their income. I mean, some of them, it's just insanity. It's total insanity out here. So I agree with you. And I'd be willing to, you know, I'd be willing to do a program below 80. We've kind of moved to CPA on these programs because it's been so hard to get the people at 80. I wish, you know, HUD would modernize a little bit and maybe change the cap a little bit of, you know, I mean, you know, especially for home ownership. I mean, it's really getting archaic to me. I think it's just a little outdated in that, you know, when the state can help folks, you know, mass housing, MHP, their incomes go up continually and ours continually go down. You know, it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And it's kind of beats up the poor borrowers, and they, you know, they're so confused by all the incomes. Well, why do you use so many different incomes? Why is there an income for this? Well, I qualify for the MHP. How come I don't qualify? I'm like, well, their income's higher than our income. Their 100% income number is higher than our 100% income number. So it's, you know, it's been a crazy year, but I'd be willing to do this for below 80% with a deed rider. It's just going to be a lot harder.
Will you tell us what's the difficulty? Would it slow it down? I mean, that's my worry on this market, that anything.
The ability of folks below 80% to find a decent enough house that doesn't need a ton of repairs, then I'm going to shoot it down and say, how are you going to afford all these repairs?
Right.
You know, because people need cash reserves for that immediate roof or whatever it is that needs to be done immediate. And the sellers aren't willing to do anything. Even the gross carpeting, the sellers don't want to do. You know, and I mean, I don't care about gross carpeting. If you want it, you can have it. It's more, you know, structural mechanical type things that we'll be looking at in the inspection reports and in determining, is this person getting themselves in over their head on this particular property based on the maintenance and repairs that it's going to need over time. So it becomes more difficult because the affordability is lower, and we don't have a ton of houses at 220 anymore. I mean, when we had houses at 220, it was easy. Now you can't even get that teeny little ranch, 3-bedroom ranch, some cases on a slab, can't even get that for 250, and it's beat up at 250. You know,
Donna,
need a lot of immediate repairs.
Donna, do you know sort of, or you have is there a way, like if someone's making 80%, what their maximum mortgage would be based off their income?
Yes, I do know. I do. I've done some scenarios. I've drawn up, so you can see this budget now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to ask questions about this, you know, it's going to take us a lot of people. We're going to have to work with folks because we're going to set some debt to income criteria. We're not going to allow them to have a mortgage payment, you know, more than 31% of their gross monthly income. That includes the escrow and any condo fees. We're not going to allow that because we don't, you know, that's a recommendation. That is a standard recommendation, the maximum amount you should take. And that's the highest amount. That's the FHA amount because I don't want to preclude anybody that might get an FHA loan. So I'm using the FHA ratio of 31 and 43% for the front and back end debt to income ratios. You know, so we're going to have some criteria that folks are going to need to have some money left over at the end of the day. You know, $5,000 in the bank at the end of the day, cash reserves, not their 401k, but cash reserves to take care of immediates because there's going to be a lot of immediates that the sellers just don't want to do. So that's what makes it difficult. But when you go below 80, because, you know, the affordability and HUD keeps dropping the incomes. You know, we got another hit. We went down again this year. We never go up. I knew it would go down. Next year is going to be even worse because of COVID. I can guarantee it. These numbers are going to go down substantially next year.
Does anyone have any questions on the budget? I mean, I don't have any questions. Does anyone have any? I think the admin costs are pretty reasonable based on the amount of people and the length of time. If not, then you can stop sharing your screen if you want to, Donna.
Okay, I'm going to share some other scenarios with you, okay?
Sure.
I'm going to share these okay. All right, so I'm going to send these to you guys if I didn't already. I thought I did, but might not have. I'm having a hectic week of reporting. All right, come on, stop highlighting there. All right, so this is an example of somebody at 80% of the area median income. I did a family of 4. So I used 67,000. It's actually 67,300, but I put it just below that. So I've kind of backed into this number, and I'm using the maximum ratios. I have all the ratios listed here, that most loans. So a person at 80%, a family of 4, making 67,000 in this current market with a rate of 3%, and this could change, okay, could actually afford a purchase of 317 and a loan of 307 if they had minimal credit, okay? Because I've only put monthly debt payments of $300 in here. I put pretty minimal. So they wouldn't have any car payments. Maybe they got a student loan and a couple credit cards. You know, this would be very minimal debt. You know, we're going to see people that have twice this debt and they won't qualify as much. So this is a person at 80 and they're going to need, you know, about, you know, $10,000 for down payment. They're going to need another 10 or 15 for closing costs because they could be charged 3 to 5% for closing costs. Our local banks, it's around 3 or less. Sometimes people come in with FHA loans from a mortgage company and, you know, we harbor one over there on North Street or something like that, and Freedom Credit Union, whoever. Sometimes people come in with FHAs and the closing costs are a little bit more. I can't really tell them not to use FHA. I don't like that they're paying paying the extra closing costs. And this is why we want to work with people to get them ready to not take the FHA and get the better deal of the MHP one or a different state product, and not pay that private mortgage insurance and additional closing fees and funding fees for that insurance, mortgage insurance. So, you know, this is an approximation. I'll just give that disclaimer. I'm not the bank, but I'm not the banker. So then I have a family of 4. A house, I will point out, a house at 317 is tight to find one at that. It's really tight, you know?
But so when if we're adding approximately $50,000
Right.
in CPA funds, that would cover, you know, that would allow them, that would cover their closing costs, cover their down payment,
Mhm.
and still allow them to have
Hopefully 20,000 in the bank. That would be great if they had that.
$30,000 for other things.
Right.
I mean, and that I don't know a lot, but I mean, that seems doable.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
does. Now that I look at it, I think it does. We just always say CPA 100% because we're struggling with these numbers. We're struggling with these numbers these days. It's really been a really rough year with COVID and everything last year and a half.
Donna, it's really helpful to put this in context. So this is very helpful. I'm just wondering, when you're doing this budget, I mean, it's super helpful. What are you allowing for maintenance? You know, so like, let's say you're talking about the scenario where you're getting a bad. So is there any money in there? Are you working into the budget? It's going too quickly for me to know, or maybe you could show me the line, like what could the repairs be?
Well, none of these include repairs. This is just
Okay,
like
so this is just straight. Okay.
Yeah, this is just a qualifying worksheet. We're hoping that people will have their reserve funds because they're getting we're hoping people will have more cash reserves because they're getting the assistance from the town.
Yeah.
So in
So
this
they're-
scenario, they, instead of them coming up with the 10,000 for down payment and the 10,000 for closing costs, they would get to keep that 20,000 because the city would. And if we were, would it be up to 50,000? So if they didn't need 50, it would basically just
Yeah,
be
we could
giving
do
them what
that
they
and stretch it.
need.
We could do that and stretch it further and base it on need. I mean, buyers are going to have to put a down payment, you know that, to get the seller to take the house off the market,
Right.
which could be credited towards their closing costs. So they are going to be putting some money in this transaction. And most loan products require some buyer funds into the transaction. You know, Mass Housing and FHA, they don't require anything in the transaction. Could all be a gift or a grant, but you're not going to get the seller to take the house off the market without a deposit.
Right.
And
And this feels like the best case scenario because I imagine most people have at least one car payment or.
yeah, that's pretty cheap, right?
Right.
I mean, I have people that are really, really savvy about paying their bills, paying them all off. You know, they're really good about it. I have a lot of really, you know, people who really control their debt pretty well. You know, I meet with a lot of people around here like that who are really savvy with their finances. You know, they're using apps and everything else. They're doing great. They've been planning for this for a decade and they still can't achieve it. You know, they've been planning for this for a long time. So, you know, we're going to need to work with some folks to get them into these guidelines, to get them below the 3143, to get them to have that savings, because we're going to set a criteria for it. We're going to say you got to have 7,500 at the end of the day in your bank account. Maybe it won't be 20,000 because, you know, student loan debts and high rents do make it difficult for low moderate income households to save. You know, I think the folks at 100% have a little more advantage because 100% numbers are they're slightly more generous. A family a single person at 80%, the income is $47,150 for the 80% number. The 100% CPA number is $57,190. It's a huge difference. I mean, it's really a huge difference in the income.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a huge difference. So then I did an example too for the 100% folks. I thought I did.
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, it's right there. I zoomed past it already. So yeah, then I did an example. Of course, the people at 100 are going to have way more buying power. You know, they're going to get close to 400,000, which is more in line with this market that we're in.
But I will say, and I think this is maybe Jamie's point, that I feel like maybe not CPA, because I mean CPA is very supportive of affordable housing. But if I was a city councilor and I was given the scenario of we're going to help people buy a $400,000 house, I might question that. So
I gotcha. I get you. And the only reason these buyers can even get up this high, they would be around 220 if we had normal circumstances. Nothing is normal. The rate has been like 2.875 all month. That allows, this is an opportunity to help people. This low rate. It's an opportunity to help people because they can buy a lot more house with these rates.
and they need to because the prices are high. But I do feel like the 80% scenario feels like something that they're like, oh, right, 315, that is still, but like even I'm thinking like, wow, 371, like that's a high number. So
We're not gonna see them. This is maximum. We're not
Yeah.
gonna see this. This is like maximum purchase, But I mean, even condos that Jamie and I looked at 3 years ago that were like 139,000 are now 180,000. It's like on South Street, those condos, it's like they were like 139. Now they're like 180. What has happened in a couple of years? It's really, all the affordable options. Even Damon Road over here in Northampton, which was always an affordable option over here, and we could at least give $1,000 away a year over on Damon Road. We can't even get buyers over there. It's all like second owners, people buying them as investments. We can't even get it. We can't even get a buyer over there, and those are up to like 170, 180.
Donna, I will say this just in terms of if you're looking for input about the CPA, I don't have the same input as Jamie, but one thing that I think is helpful is to actually emphasize the income of an 80% person. Because when you talk about the price of the house, it seems really high, but when you're talking about the income, it's actually quite low for home ownership. And so I think if you focus on that number, like that's what gets to me. I'm like, whoa.
Right. So I probably shouldn't provide these examples.
I wouldn't, but I think if you listed the number, like
Right.
what 80% means,
Mhm.
to me that's alarming because I'm like, that's a hard number to.
Right. It is. It is. I mean, for a family of four,
That's for a family of four. That's just it's not a lot of money for.
Not-
That's why I was asking. And actually, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, please, let's do 50,000. Because if we're not talking about repairs, what happens when the boiler breaks? I mean, I know you could just throw, do an equity or something like that, but I just wanted to throw it out there. That's what touched me, the actual income number for a family of four.
Well, and that's another thing. If this market goes soft, people won't be able to get that equity to make those repairs.
Good
If
point.
the market softens up and it flips, and we end up with foreclosures when all this moratorium stuff and people get out of their COVID forbearances, we don't know that people will actually be able. I don't like that. Don't worry, you can refinance or get an equity loan, because that's what happened in the last crisis. Is that everybody was told, don't worry, you can refinance, you can get an equity loan, and then none of them could, and they all foreclosed. So I don't, I'm hoping they're going to stay with this nice low rate forever and never do anything, save and plan for their maintenance, and have some reserve funds that they're going to be able to draw from to do things a little at a time, one day at a time, one room at a time, one project at a time. And these are things that we teach. We will make mandatory post-purchase education, and we'll do some follow-up with folks too, and we offer services for homeowners too, to help plan and save for maintenance and to create maintenance plans based off those inspection reports.
I would also just say, I mean, I know you're not asking, but I'll just say this and then I'll shut up, which is I don't think there's enough in the document itself that really talks about like the intention that we are making. I would talk more about you're making home ownership possible for people whom home ownership would not be possible for.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I would say it like 7 times, that it's not actually said it exactly there. Like all the things you're saying are not actually all in the document. And so I might emphasize, and what you said about the renting, right? Like that these are folks who are renting. And so, but it's not actually, if you look in the document, I don't think it's focused. I think it would be 50,000 is a lot, right? And so if we're going to ask for that, which I think we should, up to 50,000, I think there should be more support around why we need that these are folks who are going to flee the area, they're going to go to Chicopee. So just a thought, and people could disagree, but
right.
I think
And I should probably add more about keeping the diversity of the town and things like that, because people have to leave because they can't afford it.
Exactly, and that this is making home ownership possible. I mean, and then when you're talking about it, making home ownership possible for people, if we're gonna go with the 80% AMI too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Jackie, what you're saying is true. Yep, that's a good one. Jackie's saying in this rental market, hard to save up for a house if they're already at 30% of their income paying for rent.
Most of them are more than
And
that.
I was gonna say, and
Yeah,
most of them are more.
Exactly.
And then you
Most
talk
of them are
about the
more than that.
overgetness of this area too, because we're like the most highly educated, lowest paid, you know, so these are not.
Right? I know, right?
Um,
Sure.
yeah, I guess I would just, I think this is really good discussion, and I
I
would,
appreciate the discussion. I really appreciate it because I don't have Joanne to help me write all the good stuff anymore. I miss having Joanne to help me with all this.
Would say,
It's-
wait a minute,
This is
one
my
comment.
weak point: presenting and writing these proposals.
yeah,
Well, I would, oh, go ahead.
I do think that for the CPA, putting together like a slideshow or something like that, rather than just having this packet, is going to be helpful.
Gotcha.
And definitely, it would need to address SHI, the recapture, total assistance, and then also just when Jane presented to the housing partnership, she did make a focus about how this was just the down payment closing cost assistance was just one part of this program. It was also, she had mentioned
Oh yeah, we did put additional counseling to other renters and homeowners and
renter
yeah.
and foreclosure
Yeah.
prevention and stuff like that. And so I think that's really important to emphasize as well, because it's not just closing cost and first-time home buyer.
Right, it's a financial literacy program as well. But I think people look at those 50,000 per household and they're more concerned about that. They want, they're always more concerned about that money, why are we giving out this 50,000, and
Right, and I think personally, like I said, I think that if we can make it work for counting towards the SHI, I think it's going to be a home run for the CPA and city councilors, and I don't think that it'll be something that they really have a lot of problem with. But if given the cost, I think if it's not going to count on the SHI or it's not making a permanent affordability, then I see them being a lot more skeptical of this program. We funded emergency rental assistance program for $300,000, and each person is only getting up to $3,000. And these are also folks who are low and moderate income. And where's the equity with some people in the city? 4 lucky winners are going to win the lottery and get $50,000,
right.
and everyone else just sort of gets a little bit. So
Do you think you think they would want a lottery? Do you think they would want like a lottery?
I don't think we won a lottery. I
All
think
right.
that
All right, because that's
You know.
all right. I just need to
I
know
think
that.
that's too hard because then you have to have 4 people ready. You have to have more than 4 people ready all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And that seems
Some
like
the marketing plan and the outreach and the meetings and all that, and then you end up with 2 people. This is what happens to me all the time. All that work for a
Well,
couple people.
I don't think you need a lottery as long as you include how much work you're going to be doing with people, right? And actually, that's like everyone thinks they want a lottery, but they really don't. We're going to be paying you, and if you talk about how you're doing this pre-work, it's just a nice kind. You're working with people, and if you describe it, I don't think anyone wants a lottery. I don't think it will work.
I only said the word lottery because it was as if they won the lottery, not to say.
Yeah, you scared me. You scared me with that word.
No,
So
no.
Jamie, if I rework this up, is it okay if I send it out to you and just chit chat with you here and there about getting it ironed out so that I could, get ready to go to the next meeting?
Yeah, I think I'll send you the application form for the CPA if I hadn't already. But I think that you can submit it to the CPA whenever you're ready. I don't know if it makes sense to have the housing partnership look at another draft, so that way they, a letter can be written that sort of says the response to what the final proposal looks like. It may not need to come and actually present it again, but at least giving the partnership another opportunity to weigh in.
Okay, great. So do you want me to meet with you again next week to just like next month to just finalize that we're gonna do 80%, we're gonna do based on need, maybe one household gets 25,000, maybe one household gets 35 and one gets 50, but nothing over 50. Those are the changes that I see, up to 50, meaning it's flexible based on need.
We don't typically meet in August. We need to talk about this.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Um,
gotcha. And
we
I'm getting
usually
tied
take
up to the-
August off. But you could
Okay.
send it to us via email, I think.
Okay.
I mean, my other comment, Donna, is just to like make it a little bit more succinct. Like I would be really clear, like what it is, what's the eligibility criteria for someone to participate, what are you going to do with them, and then maybe talk about like the why and stuff. But I felt
Right.
like I
The
feel like
need,
it,
yeah, it's
yeah,
kind of all
make-
over the place. Yeah, it's kind
Well,
of all
just
over the
for them
place.
to
I
read
did
it.
look at. I know, I get it. I totally get it. It was a work in progress of 3 people writing it, and it gets too crazy when you do that.
I have
Yeah.
one comment though. If we were to go down this road of trying to get things listed on the SHI, would Valley do all of that work as part of this program, or would it fall on the city to actually put the applications in and deal with DHCD?
We will deal with DHCD, but you would have to put in the application initially. But I will deal with Rieko, whoever I'm signed to over at DHCD for all the closings and all that kind of stuff. But we would like you to do the application, the SHI application.
And how much work is that? Because I'm just thinking like city staff time, like we don't have currently, like, we're all like very overworked. So
I
I mean,
get it.
the adding new units form is 1 page.
Yeah.
But I guess I would just feel like we might need, so this is what it's asking for: documentation evidencing the zoning or permitting mechanism. The units are subsidized by an eligible state or federal program. They're subject to a long-term deed restriction. They're subject to an affirmative fair housing marketing plan. So I feel like we need a little bit clarity that like that's the form that we need to use, and like what we're doing meets that form, because we're not building any housing, we're not permitting anything. We didn't use a 40B application. We don't have an I mean, maybe CPA counts as an eligible state or federal program, but I feel like we might need some clarity. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Donna, if you could get clarity, or the plan.
I can reach out to like Rieko or somebody like that
Yeah.
and get some clarity. I do have deed writers in other towns for down payment assistance, and they're on the inventory and they're using a lip deed writer or something.
Yeah, okay.
A lip deed writer, local initiative deed writer, and they can be counted on the inventory with the lip deed writer.
Yeah, so
So,
let's
I
just
mean,
make sure we're using the right thing.
Yeah.
So if we're doing this, then it sounds like what we're doing is actually creating a housing buy down program, right? Like as opposed to, I mean, I don't know if that's, if I'm using the right terms, but
Well, because we had initially, if COVID hadn't happened, we had initially planned to do this, like over a year ago. And because the taxes had gone up in Easthampton substantially, and we had been planning to do this program for quite a while, but a lot of crazy things happened, and it just didn't, and then the market went insane, so it just didn't happen. We just didn't feel the timing was right. But we think now we're starting to see properties go below the asking price. We're starting to see some go, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 below the asking price. They could be the junky ones, I don't know. But, we're not seeing so much over the asking price as we were 2 months ago. So it felt like a good time to come back in for this. And we are doing those additional things, offering foreclosure prevention counseling, financial literacy counseling. But I will do that.
yeah, great.
Awesome. I
Okay.
thank you all so much for your time. Thank you so much. Nice meeting you. Nice seeing
Thanks,
you.
Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Great seeing you.
You too.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Donna.
Um,
So I have thoughts on all of that. just because of my experiences working with people for so many years who are low income or extreme low income, I'm really hesitant to encourage people at like 80% area median income to buy a house right now in Easthampton, because I feel like we're putting them in an arena with real estate juggernauts that are going to push them around. And what I'm afraid of is that we're going to have people who are going to feel compelled to buy a house right now because the window is available right now, to take advantage of this $50,000. And I just don't think that now is the correct time to be encouraging people to buy a house in Easthampton, especially since, I mean, if we're having people who are, selling houses $20,000-$30,000 over asking price, I mean, that could potentially eat up most of that $50,000. And I guess what I would want to know is, at what level is Valley CDC willing to say no?
Oh,
This is not, just to say that this is, I understand that this technically qualifies, but this is not actually the best thing for you to do right now. I don't know. That's my only concern, is just, I think it's a rough time to be buying a house, period. And I would just hate to see low income people in Easthampton getting pushed around by people out of state who are just buying house after house after house and not being able to compete, or having to settle for a home that is so below quality for a cost that they would potentially be paying. Like, I wouldn't want to see someone pay $280,000 for a house that's actually only worth 180 or 200,000. So that's just kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I think that Valley CDC does an excellent job counseling people. And I think that Donna is she's been doing this a really long time, and I think she will say to someone, no, I'm not going to give you the money for this house.
Yeah, okay.
I question how successful it will be. I agree. I think even with a $50,000 grant, I do think that they're just going to get outbid. Not that doesn't mean like we shouldn't try, but I am worried that it's just still not going to work. That people would pay cash, and if you can accept I mean, if I'm a seller and I have a cash offer or an offer from this lovely person who has all these strings attached that I'm gonna have to sign all this stuff for and wait around and wait for the city to cut a check, like, I'm gonna take the cash offer.
Right.
Unless I'm like a really ethical person, so I just think that I'm more concerned that she is a bit scattered, and I think that presenting a loan is going to be a challenge, because I was even confused at the end when then she said, oh, now we're seeing houses go below asking. And I was like, 40 minutes ago, you said they were going above asking. So I'm confused. I think her message is confusing.
May I ask you guys a question as we're discussing this? Is
Yeah.
there a possibility, can we push this off? I mean, let's just call a spade, right? Where Valley CDC is in a transition period. Jane is no longer there.
Right.
Every executive director is their presenter, right? Like, that's what they do. They're the politician. And so I don't want to say I disagree with you, Brad. I mean, I think that there's I'm more along the Jana line in the sense of, I just don't think it's going to work, right? And the counter argument to you, Brad, though I agree, is that there's also the flip side of that is COVID has brought up a lot of insecurity for a lot of folks, and a lot of low income folks that I work with really want to buy a house now, right? Like, it's like, and who am I to say don't do it? Though I am concerned about the upside down mortgage as well. But I feel like there's also the counter argument, which is like, who are we to be paternalistic and say this is what you should or shouldn't do? And we have to kind of, but I do on a very practical, functional level, like, and I don't think that she was presenting to us, but yeah, it was like a very scattered, it's, so I do wonder if we combine all of those concerns, if there is a way, because I also think it would be a more effective program if we waited for the market to cool a little bit. Like, I don't, for whatever reason you want to do it, right? If it's the Brad way or the Jana way, like, I actually think, I think it would just be more effective if the market cooled in a year.
Yeah.
So I wonder.
I'm also worried about waiting because what if it doesn't? You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's tough. I don't know. I guess I don't have a solution in place of what she's suggesting, but I just wonder if there's a better usage of 200,000 in CPA funds that will help in the immediate moment for more people than 4. Also, your kid's adorable. I can't believe
Oh,
like,
thank you.
it just feels like you were pregnant not too long ago. I'm
It's
sure it
like-
doesn't feel like that to you, but
He's almost a year.
Wow.
Crazy. So I want to just add a couple things. One is buyers are going to be looking and getting beat up anyway, which is my very small argument in favor of why we might want to support this. Like that's just going to happen, and having more opportunity is never a bad thing. However, I hear all the other things you're saying, and I do think that doesn't Valley have another proposal in front of us right now? CPA?
And
Yeah,
that's
that's why I got really
and-
confused.
and that's the other thing too, is I think that bringing this proposal to CPA right now, they're going to say, okay, but we just funded you
Mhm.
$80,000 to do this pre-development assessment thing for rental. And I understand, like, you know, that approval doesn't even go in until August 4th. So I mean, having a little bit of time might be good, just to you know, have a little space for it. But it's clearly there are different project managers doing different projects, and it's not a capacity issue. As far as I think Valley would be concerned.
so do you think it would, do you think it would be too late to have her come back in September with a more polished presentation with some of the questions and concerns we had to see? Because at least for me right now, I mean, I obviously trust all of your professional opinions if you feel okay with this, but in terms of like writing a letter of support,
Not ready.
I don't feel that I'm okay with that right now.
Yeah.
But it's literally a right now thing. So I think if we could get a more cohesive presentation, is the other person that works at Valley CDC also Donna?
Laura.
Oh, Laura. Okay, yeah, perfect. You know what I mean? If we could get what she's trying to explain into that kind of a reduced PowerPoint presentation, then I think that would help me with my my concerns, and I think it would be an easier sell with CPA also. But I mean, I feel like they also support anything that's helping poverty and affordable housing. So if they can do the 80% and make it work, I think CPA is going to support it. But
I think that there was a difference in the timing of the rental assistance program versus this program here. Like I think people who are in rental units who are going to be foreclosed on is a very different,
yeah.
like it's very different than being like, I want to buy a house.
Well, I also just want to name that this is $200,000 and there are limits to CPA, like it's not an infinite. And so I just also want to name, and I also don't want to waste Donna's time. So I think we should also talk about which way we want to go, in the sense of one of my hopes of the other Valley CDC proposal, which I do apologize. I think that's why I got really confused. I was like, wait, isn't she presenting? And is that, you know, one possible outcome of the pre-development is that they identify a spot that we could do another affordable housing development on. And if we use the 200 grand, like 100%, if we're going to support any kind of affordable housing, we're going to have to use CPA funds. Like it's just part of the like the one-stop thing is always going to require if they're going to get it, the town has to give some money. So that's my slight reluctance as well, which is just how much, does anyone know how much money we've got in CPA left?
So
Yeah.
when the fiscal year ended, they had about $1 million in the just total, not like just not for housing. And then the final budget that was approved adds another $500,000. And then there's some miscellaneous funds that they received that weren't in the budgets from previous years. So like when the fiscal year, and we haven't got this, we won't get it until October, until like the books actually close from FY21, but there's somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million available for CPA right now. But
And
the
what
CPA
percent?
has a,
1,000? Yeah.
but the CPA has a lot of other things that they want to do as well. They're going to be asked to fund creation of the rental units when that comes through. There's the Old Town Hall project, and Parks and Rec has a number of very big ticket items that they would like to see improved. But typically housing has been the been given the short, I guess, the short straw for a while. So, but I do think that there's this like dollars per person type of calculation that isn't really, I mean, that's sort of what the CPA has to decide, is like, you know, when you fix the bathroom at Nonotuck Park, or create a new sports field, how many people does that impact versus, you know, for the same amount of money, 1 or 2 housing units that have
How much money did we give for Parsons Village?
200,000.
200,000. Yeah, I mean, Amherst gave 500, $500,000 for the new Valley CDC.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you know, I'm going to say, even though I like this proposal, my vote would actually be to not support it at this time, just because I don't think it's enough bang for our buck. And the reason why I'm just putting it out there is I don't want to make Donna dance for us if we're not gonna.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, I actually think that Valley CDC is a great organization, and I actually have a lot of faith and confidence that they're really compared to some other places, like that they're really coaching people and they're not going to let them buy something. But with all the things in terms of bang for your buck and the possibility of an upside down mortgage.
So what if, I mean, so the other piece to look at would be if they left the mortgage subsidies, closing cost assistance out of this, then the entire program is a $57,000 program that helps 45
yeah.
with financial counseling, financial literature, all the rest of that. And that seems to be, you know, because for her note in her slide, I think she had for 45 households, the financial counseling comes to about $1,500 per household. And that's supportive, affordable housing that actually seems like, you know, we're not pressuring people to take a mortgage that's upside down. They're getting counseled. And if they decide that it's right for them, great. And then we can use that funds to, you know, at that point, the CPA is not going to be concerned for $50,000, $60,000 about getting things listed on the SHI. We're just trying to support people into making good decisions.
The only pushback I have on that, Jamie, and I'm sure it's something we can work through, is that what I heard Donna say was, we're counseling all these people who want to live in Easthampton, but they're ending up buying in Greenfield and Chicopee. So then we're using Easthampton money to help people buy houses elsewhere. And that, I think, is we're going to get pushback.
I mean, it's not disallowed under CPA law.
Right.
I'm not,
I'm just saying, I think the committee might push back on that.
Well, I was going to suggest maybe we ask this sort of similarly, like maybe we ask her to shrink it. So I think the 56,000 for the 45 households, I think is really compelling. And I think, you know, if I put on my nonprofit budget hat, she probably needs that $56,000. I mean, you know, like they probably are looking for ways to support their work. And they would love to get support from the city of Easthampton. But maybe we say, you know, how about you do 2 households at $20,000? Or, you know, I mean, I think the 50,000 is a big number, and I hear what she's saying, but I think it's going to be a rough sell. And but you know, what if it's 2 households at 20,000, and then we see what happens? I mean, I don't know. But I like the idea of supporting them and supporting their work, and they're working with a lot of Easthampton residents.
I think that's the key to it, is that they're drawing on people who, with the counseling piece of it, they're helping people who live in Easthampton. You know,
Yeah,
and
I think
whether or not they actually end up buying in Easthampton doesn't matter, because there's going to be countless people who are going to be foreclosed on in Easthampton, and there are people who are living in Easthampton who are interested in buying housing, and maybe they can buy in Easthampton, maybe they buy in Holyoke. It doesn't really matter because they're Easthampton residents now.
I echo what Jamie's saying, that I think if we did the program, and the way to get around, Jackie, your concern would be, you can't just say, I want to buy in Easthampton, that this housing program is for Easthampton residents. And that we will counsel 40, I mean, I'm throwing this out there and people can, and if that means that Easthampton people are moving to homeownership in Chicopee, then so be it, right? That's a problem that we need to talk about, but that's really helping. It's using our CPA funds. And I don't know, Jana, I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to do the 20, but I do feel like, I don't think it's great for us when we set up programs that aren't used. Like, I think it looks bad. And so I don't think 20 is going to be helpful. Like, I think it's going to be like, so I would just I would vote that we just leave it at the counseling targeted to Easthampton. That would be my.
And I think that's going to be something that we need a lot of. I'm afraid of a big coming foreclosure crisis. I think that a lot of people are going to be in trouble when all these nice things that the government has done to stop foreclosures over the last year and a half come to an end. So if we can get ahead of that and have a foreclosure prevention program, more, financial counseling before that happens, then like we can refer people to the program. The city is saying we're going to take your home for back taxes. Go talk to Valley CDC. They're going to work with you.
Well, we could give this feedback to Donna and ask her to come back in September with a revamped proposal. We can ask her to do a PowerPoint presentation to go with the proposal that's, easy for people to digest and understand. I mean, she might come back and say, no, I don't, we don't want to do that. And that would be up to them. Also suggest alternatively wait, see what the market happens with the market. I mean, the original proposal, the time frame was actually like not happening for a while anyway. It was like not slated to start till April, and then not till the third quarter of, I don't know what would it take, would she start doing mortgages? But I also think it's tough to have two Valley CDC proposals back to back.
I would just, from conversations I've had with Donna previously, I know that the driving force behind this is like the bread and butter for work is the counseling that she does. I think the mortgage, the closing costs mortgage assistance stuff is sort of just like how she's trying to sell it to the town as like what the benefit is that we're going to get some new homeowners, affordable homeowners. But I think that, if she didn't have to do that piece of it, I think it would be fine, because they're doing the counseling anyways. They're teaming up with banks and all this other stuff, and it just makes it easier to fund her program and her position and the work that they're doing. But I'm not going to speak too much for her.
Jackie, Brad, what do you think?
I'm totally in support of providing the feedback and then having her rework it and see what it looks like. But I personally am hesitant for any of this. I just don't think now is the right time. Partly because of the thing that I'm about to talk about next is I've been up into my ears in real estate transactions all over Massachusetts, and to me there just doesn't seem like, I don't know, it just seems like a really ugly time to be encouraging people who are at risk financially to take financial risks. That's the only thing. But if they can make it work and you all believe in it, then I mean, I trust you all, and I haven't seen Valley CDC do anything that I haven't believed in yet. So I'm sure that they can make it work, but if it were me deciding, I wouldn't, because I'm more risk averse to that kind of stuff. But that's just my personal opinion.
Brad, I'm
Okay.
just gonna say one more thing as a counter, because I do really believe in financial counseling, which is, and I, even if I didn't think Valley CDC was great, but I do think they are, which is a lot of people who are gonna go into an upside down mortgage are gonna do it without counseling anyway. And actually, I think it's
Yeah,
way better
True.
to meet with Valley CDC, who gives them really good advice,
Yep.
and says, don't do this. And so for me, I would always prefer someone to go to an agency rather than, because they will. I mean, I don't feel like Valley CDC is, so that's just that I think it helps people who would otherwise
Yep.
get themselves in a real crisis if they just go to the lending institution. And you're right, it might sometimes result in people buying, but I think it actually is the opposite. Like in my mind, funding this program will reduce.
Yeah.
The goal is not to, I don't think the goal of the program is necessarily to increase home ownership. It's to increase home ownership.
Smart home ownership.
Yeah, home ownership when possible. If that's
Yeah.
the right possible. So that,
That's a really good
to-
counterpoint.
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with the point I was making, which is lots of people are going to be trying to buy anyway because everyone thinks that's what they're supposed to be doing, and I'd rather have Donna counseling them to not do it right now or whatever. Do we think that the CPA committee is going to be willing to support it if it's just the counseling piece without, like, what if they did split it apart?
I think they would, but I mean, I've only been sitting in on their meetings for about a year now, but just from what I've seen, I think that they definitely would do the financial literacy piece for sure.
And do you think, so the other question would be, so what if the revamped proposal was really about the first time home buyer counseling and financial stuff, but there was a piece in there that was to be continued at some point when the housing market doesn't look like this, we're educating these people so that later we can come back and ask for this kind of money.
That's cool. I like that. Like that, basically the people that finish the program are eligible in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a
really good idea, Jackie.
Yeah.
Well, because also Valley CDC stays in contact with people too. So maybe if this program ever did, and they'll remember it and they'll have a file and they'll say, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, and the other piece that she could write about is when, something at Mountain View condos comes up that's an affordable, then they have people ready to buy that. Because that does happen, and they have trouble finding people to buy those condos sometimes and other places like that.
That's a great point.
Yep. You're good at this.
Well, that's a really one. So then you could then circle it into the SHI inventory, right? Which is we want to maintain our affordable units. And this program actually supports us in maintaining our affordable units rather than losing them. That's a good one, Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's writing all this down to send back to Donna, right?
I mean, yes. It's also recorded, which is always very helpful when you need to remember what we talked about. But yes, I am writing. I'm taking notes. I know Brad's taking notes for the meeting, but I'm also taking notes about this. But I think that's a great point. And also, we have Treehouse, right? There's those units over at Treehouse that are homeownership units. So we have two, right? Is it just those two that are homeownership affordable units in town? Mountain View and Treehouse. I think
so.
Maybe.
Yeah. And another, I mean, Northampton has some, it's not just, I mean, they could be helping keep everybody's inventory. I mean, no one wants to talk about Northampton, I'm just saying. All right, I just want to be aware of the time because I know Brad has another agenda item. So are we feeling, I will send Jamie, maybe you and I together can work up some feedback for Donna and then ask her to come back in September.
Yeah, I can help you with that. I know you're on vacation next week.
I am.
So, but yeah, we can coordinate on that.
Okay. Great. All right, so let's move on to our next agenda item. which I'm going to hand over to Brad.
All right, I have a little PowerPoint if you can make me a copy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's, no,
Whoa,
don't
Brad,
get excited. It's super
impressive.
simple. It's just a couple of things. So before I start this, I just want to put it out there for any potential conflicts of interest. So the legislation that I'm talking about right now was written by my boss. It was my decision to bring it to Easthampton just because I realized that this could actually help us out a lot. So I went through the process with Senator Comerford's office. They checked everything. So there's no ethical issues for me pitching this to you because the only people that would benefit from it is the Easthampton community. So just putting that out there.
Conflict of interest. No, I'm just messing. It's the end of the day. Don't you love conflict of interest law?
All right, let's see here. All right, so I'm just going to leave this open because sometimes I screw things up when I go into full screen, but you can see this fine?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so so the legislation specifically that I'm talking about, S868, it's a Senate bill called an act empowering cities and towns to impose a fee on certain real estate transactions to support affordable housing. Blah, blah, blah. I feel like their bill names are a little too long, but that's okay. It says exactly what it's supposed to do. So essentially what this bill is it gives cities and towns in Massachusetts the opportunity, if they would like to impose a real estate transfer tax on single family home sales. And all of the revenue that comes from those transfer taxes gets earmarked for affordable housing funds in the community that the transaction takes place. So for the most part, those funds would be going into the Community Preservation Act, but you can use it for the housing trusts. You can use it for, God, what was the Housing Authority? You know what I mean? It's pretty much anything related to helping poverty alleviation and housing in your community. You can use this money for that. It can't be used for anything else other than affordable housing. So here's just some quick rundowns of how this works. So it gives the city council the opportunity to tailor the policy to their community's own specific needs. So the policy starts off with a minimum 0.5% tax on all real estate that's sold, up to a 2% tax. The benchmark that they're using is state median sale price of a single family home. Now, in Massachusetts right now, that's really high. Like it's upwards of like $500,000 for the entire state. So for communities that don't even meet that threshold, there's an element in the legislation that allows you to go to the county level instead of the state level. So for Easthampton, we would qualify for that. So what we're looking at is the median sale price of single family homes in our county. And so the revenue gets deposited into a housing authority or CPA, and that's pursuant to Section 7 of Chapter 44B. And then the other thing that's really great about this is the city council can decide on whether or not the seller, the buyer, or a combination of both parties pays for the tax. So if we would like to, for people that are buying from outside of Easthampton, we could make it a rule that if you're going to buy in Easthampton, whatever that 0.5 to 2% tax is, you would need to pay that, and it goes into our affordable housing funding sources.
Brad, would you like us to save questions for the end or just popcorn?
No, you can go try it now. Go for it.
Is it flexible enough? By the way, I love this legislation, but is it flexible enough that we can set a number at which house price number at which it's imposed? So, for example, houses sold over 300,000.
Yeah, so the number would be set by the median sale price of all houses that are
Okay.
sold in our county per calendar year. And I believe that it would be by April 1st, we would get that new number. So on a technicality, it really goes from April 1st to March 31st. And then that number would get updated every year by DHCD. And then they would release the numbers out to us saying, this is basically what the new number is for your community. And then all houses that are sold at that number or higher would qualify for the percent tax. All right, so specifically, how does this help Easthampton? So it provides a little bit of control and puts some guardrails on our housing market trends. So, you know, if we wanted to make housing less competitive in Easthampton, we could, you know, go for the full 2%. That might discourage people from wanting to buy houses at such high prices. I don't realistically know how strong of an impact that has, but any kind of leverage we can get one way or the other, I think is beneficial. Or, you know, like I said before, if we wanted to place the tax burden on buyers, you know, that's another way to disincentivize people from moving in, which would make housing more affordable and more available for people in Easthampton. It also gives us the opportunity to increase our subsidized housing inventory because the amount of money that we would be generating, we can actually put towards building more affordable housing units. It promotes housing equity for low to moderate income residents and then generates much needed revenue for all of our affordable housing strategies. So what does that look like right now? So I went through and I did the math. It took me way too long, but I looked at every single house that was sold in our county between April 1st, 2020 to March 31st of this year. So that was a median sale price of $280,000. And in Easthampton for that time period, we had 17 houses that sold above the 280,000 threshold. So these numbers right here are just kind of giving you an idea. If we used this opportunity, 0.5% real estate transfer tax, that would have generated $28,000 last year. 1%, $56,000, 1.5%, $84,000, and then up to a maximum of $112,000. So, you know, in just thinking about what we were talking about with Donna, right, that the $200,000 price tag was a little up there. I mean, even just a opportunity like this could cleave something like that in half, or we could put money into funding our housing trust that, you know, the mayor and Councilor Peak just recently talked to us about. I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room on what we can do with these kinds of funds.
So can I just clarify that I'm doing the math right? So on a $280,000 house, 1/2 of 1% would be $1,400.
Maybe.
Does that sound right? Yes.
Yeah, it honestly, like, it depends on the cost of the house, but yeah, sometimes like $1,000 to $2,000 low end, like up to like $8,000 per sale.
Okay.
The other thing too that I didn't put in here because I just didn't see a lot of that happening in our county, but there's also a 6% speculative tax. If the house that is being, you know, like if there's someone buys a house, flips it, and then tries to sell it, if that house equals triple the median sale price, then that tax becomes 6%. But I think honestly, as I was reading through the policy, I think that's more to discourage international investors from purchasing real estate in Boston and using it as an asset to generate revenue. And then they basically sell the properties whenever they want the excess money. So I don't see that really comes into play here, but I suppose it's always possible.
So Brad, I have to go. Oh, I'm sorry. I do just want to ask as you're going, because I do have to leave at 7:30. Are
Okay.
you wanting that partnership support on this? What are